And we're live. Hey guys, what's going on? CJ here with the WODprep podcast, and I am joined by the voice himself, Mr. Sean Woodland, who has pretty much influenced my entire CrossFit career, and I assume everyone listening theirs as well. And yeah, I'm super excited to get him on. And those that are WODprep fans, you know, we just started this podcast, and so I was like, yeah, but we just started, and I'll just shoot for the stars and try and get Mr. Media himself on. Why not? Because I know so much about interviewing. So we'll trial by fire and we'll see how it goes. Sean, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for asking me, man.
Yeah, man. So I just want to start off and just ask how you are and how everything is going, and we'll just jump right in. And how are you feeling about, you know, everything that happened?
Yeah, it's going well. Life is good. I can't complain. I still have, plenty of opportunities in the space that I'm pursuing right now, events that I'm hoping to be part of in the next few months, Rogue being one of them. Really looking forward to that. Love working with Rogue, first class organization. I mean, I can't say enough good things about them. So I'm super stoked to be able to be part of that event again. And, there's some other ones that I'm talking to about possibly getting involved. Still very much want to be involved in the space. So as I said, when I made the announcement, like, this isn't I'm going forever.
Sure.
So yeah. And still doing the podcast with Lauren and Tommy. That's been going well, and looking at other opportunities outside of CrossFit broadcast wise to try to expand my horizons. That's been a difficult but informative sort of endeavor right now. And things are good. Had a great fourth and can't complain.
So is that difficult in the sense of emotionally because you're actively, leaving the space or moving your way outside of the space, or is it just in general difficult because you've been out of the traditional space for so long?
It's mostly the latter. I've been out of the space for a while, and I have enough confidence in my abilities to know that I think if you drop me in any sort of traditional sports situation, I can pull it off. Sure. The problem is when you talk to people who are looking to hire people for those roles, they need to see you do it.
Sure.
And I don't have anything but a lot of CrossFit and maybe some bouldering that I've done for.
I was going to say, I saw you on like rock climbing world championships, right?
It was a lot of fun. The USA climbing championships, that was a lot of fun getting to be involved in that and learning a new sport. But they want to see it. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I get reps to call these other sports or be involved in these other sports? Maybe do some studio hosting that I can put on tape and then take to people who work at these bigger networks or sports networks and say, look, this is my breadth of work. This is what I can do. I'd like an opportunity. And it's just a really competitive space. It's hard to kind of break in. So I'm doing my best to sort of branch outside that, but obviously still want to be involved in the CrossFit space because it's, I love it. And I've worked super hard to get where I am, and I'm certainly not ready to be done with it.
Yeah, I can speak for everyone, all 17 people watching, and hopefully a lot more that do watch it. We hope you're not done with it as well too. And so the weeks leading up, I heard you on Talking Elite Fitness and just kind of laying it out. There's a lot of unknown leading into the season, and who's going to do what, and preparation is all seems a lot of last minute, right? And so how did that go down? So you posted it 9 days ago was when you posted, and so like, how far after had you gotten that notification, and then what did that look like? Who called you? Did Don just like hit you up, or was it Dave, or how did that go down?
Well, I found out 2 weeks prior to posting.
Okay.
And I didn't find out through official channels.
That's the worst. That's what I figured.
There was no one from CrossFit reached out to me. No one who made that decision reached out to me, nor have they since. And as I learned more and more about the situation, I figured out, okay, this is a real thing. I'm not doing this. And I wanted to wait to say anything for a couple of reasons. First is that the initial, like when I first heard about it, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. Like I did not take it well. I was pretty upset about it. And I wanted to wait to say anything because I didn't want that to sort of influence the way that I put something out on social media. I didn't want it to sound angry. I didn't want to go after anybody. I did anything like that. And when you react with raw emotion, especially on social media, that tends to happen. I treat social media like I do a car or a loaded gun. Don't operate it when you're angry or you're drunk.
Sure.
And I don't drink, but I do. I was obviously upset about it. So I wanted to wait, and I wanted to give someone from CrossFit an opportunity to reach out to me to give me some sort of reason so I could say, hey, here's what happened, here's why, and best of luck to everybody and move on. Well, that didn't happen. And it got to the point where I wanted to get it done earlier than so I didn't want to get it done really close to the games because I don't want to take anything away from the people who are going to be there and make this like a distraction for Chase and the whole team that is going to be on site, doing a tremendous job, by the way. And it just got to the point where some more people knew about it, and I said, okay, now I have to put this out there, and I did. And that night was the first time that I had heard from anybody from CrossFit. So I posted Wednesday night is when Don Fall texted me. And did not give me reason for the move, but instead said, I understand that the decision is disappointing. We'd like to work with you in the future if you're up for it. Thank you so much for everything you've done, and left it at that. And I just said, hey, thanks for reaching out. Appreciate it. And that is the last contact I've had with anybody over at CrossFit.
It's the only contact. So it seems like you probably found out by the quote unquote replacement, right? I would assume, of who's going to be doing it instead. And I know with Chase, because of the rumor, I don't know if it's been announced, but the rumor is that it's Adrian. And is that generally how you found out? Was you found out Adrian was going to be doing it, and that was just sort of deduction?
I just found out I wasn't involved. Couple people who didn't really coordinate both told me, and then I got kind of a third person that was like, hey man, what's going on? I just got this. And I went, okay, that kind of confirms it.
Sure. And so is there any, Dave mentioned that there might be something in the works in Fort Worth. Nothing moving forward.
Haven't heard.
Okay. Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there with Talking Elite Fitness?
Don't know. Yeah, that's TBD.
TBD. Sure. And is there anything you can talk about on that? What's that dependent on? Is it just if you can set up a live show, or if you can?
We're going to have a presence there.
Sure.
And for me, it's a lot. I mean, a lot of it is just, it's personal from the standpoint of that it's hard on my family when I go. And if I'm not getting paid what I usually get paid there, not that it's a ton of money, that it just puts a financial burden, or not a financial burden. It just puts a huge burden on my wife to take care of 3 kids and a dog and work, or 1 kid, 3 dogs and a full-time job.
Sure.
While I'm out of town. And so there's that element to it. And then there's the other element. I don't want to be a distraction. I don't want to show up and again, take away from the people who are there, who are working hard, doing a good job. I kind of want to just give it a little bit of time. Now, if we at Talking Elite Fitness, if the only way that we can pull off what we need to pull off on site is to have me there, then obviously I'll go because it's the best thing for the team. But right now I'm sort of leaning towards not being there.
Gotcha. How would that feel?
It'll be weird. I mean, I've been there every year since 2011. I went as a fan in 2011, and then I have been to every game since in a working capacity since 2012.
Right.
And as I said in my post, I will miss the people that I get to see on a yearly basis there. We call it TV summer camp, because it's sort of the only time a lot of us are together, because everybody comes and works that event. They all do other stuff in broadcasting, whether it's running camera for different sports, or video guys who work in the truck are doing different things. And it's like really the only time that we're all together. And this group of people that I've known over the last 12 years have become like a second family to me. And it's just, I love seeing them. I love working with them. I love being part of that team. They're all super talented. They've all had a huge impact on my career, and they're all great people. And so that will be weird, not being there and being part of that. I will absolutely miss that. But I've watched CrossFit events on stream. I watch the semifinals. I watch all that stuff. So
sure.
Yeah.
WODprep considers it our summer camp too. We, our team is fully remote, and we treat, even though we're working and coaching, we treat it like our social gathering, kind of like our retreat. So I feel you there. So you kind of brought it back to the start. So we'll go back to the beginning, and I don't think a lot of people really know your full backstory. So you've been in broadcasting almost 25 years now,
I think
20. And so tell me what that was like. So you went to college for film and didn't like it. So by the way, I know most of this from the Invictus podcast you did, and I just riddled it. And so talk to us how you got into broadcasting, and then kind of how you transitioned into CrossFit.
I was a big movie buff growing up. And as I got a little bit older and got out of high school, I got more interested in, I want to make movies. I want to direct or something like that. I love the creative process. And at the time, the best film schools were UCLA, USC, and then San Francisco State had a really good one too. Well, I didn't get into USC or UCLA. And so San Francisco State accepted me. I went as a film major, and I got there and I had much different expectations about what the program was going to be than what it actually felt like it was. And the more I sort of got into it, the more I realized I don't think this is going to be for me. I just don't fit in with this crowd. This is not, I mean, I'll never forget. I crashed some sort of like directing class, and I'm thinking about, doing this as a business. Like, how am I going to get a job? Because that's the whole point of going to college.
Right.
Like, how am I going to get paid? And there were people talking about wanting to make a documentary about some woman doing pottery. I'm like, what the F is this? Like, this is not, no, I want to know how to make like honest to God stuff that can get me employed. And I just was like, this is not working out for me. And I remember I went back to my dorm room one night and I started looking at the class list. And, I grew up as a huge sports fan, loved NFL films. And I was still looking at this through like, what can I do behind the camera? Mm-hmm. And they have a good broadcasting department at San Francisco State, and they had a sportscasting class. I went, oh, this sounds cool. Maybe I can go learn how to shoot sports and do that. And decided to switch my major, got into the sportscasting class. It was run by a guy by the name of Val Sokovich, who had been there for years. I don't think he's still there, but that class is the only reason I got a job at a high school, at a college, because it was very realistic. It's like, you're going to learn how to do everything. Mm-hmm. We're going to prepare you for when you get your first job in news or sports or whatever you're going to do. You're going to do everything. You're going to shoot, you're going to edit, you're going to do all your own stuff. You're going to one-man band. And it taught me the skills that I needed then to put together a demo reel and get my first job in Kalispell, Montana at this real small station doing sports. Because that's, as I worked my way through the sportscasting class, you get a chance to sort of do everything. Right. And they tried me out doing some in front of the camera stuff. And I remember Val came to me and said, hey, you're pretty good at this. You should try it. And I said, okay. And so I started doing play-by-play for our basketball games and for some volleyball games. I think we did some soccer. We did some baseball. I got experience doing all that. And then I was able to put together a demo tape through my internship at the time it was Sports Channel Pacific. And now it's like Comcast Sportsnet Bay Area, I think, or Comcast Sportsnet California. I had one shot to do my anchoring thing. Like, they let me in there just randomly. Like, yeah, go ahead and do the show. And that was my demo tape plus some stuff that I shot in college. And I ended up getting a job in Kalispell, Montana. So that was like middle of nowhere. That was an experience coming from Sacramento, California.
For sure.
Going up to Kalispell.
37 people that live there.
It was nuts. I remember getting directions from Steve Fetvite, who's the guy who hired me. And I owe a ton to him. He passed away recently. But he was giving me directions over the phone, because this was 1997. So there was no
anything,
iPhone or anything like that.
Right.
You get the map and write the directions down. And he said, okay, well, so off of Highway 93, you're going to hit Main Street, and then you're going to turn right. I went off on First. I went, okay, back up. What exit do I take off 93 to get to Main Street? He goes, no. Highway 93 just becomes Main Street. I went, what the hell is this? Because that was a totally foreign world to me. Worked there for a year, a little more than a year. Got my next job in Tallahassee, Florida. And I thought that was huge, because now I'm going from just covering nothing but high school sports. So I get to go to Florida State and cover them. So
were you working at Florida State? Is that where you were? I assume
I was in Tally. That's who I mainly covered. I worked at WTXL, the ABC affiliate there, but we covered Florida State athletics. So it was when, I was 3 feet from Peter Warwick, if you remember that one.
Oh, yeah, of course. So what, you were in their late 90s then?
Late 90s. It was when they were at the heights. They had Chris Wink.
That's the best time to be in Tallahassee.
Heisman. They beat Mike Vick's team at Virginia Tech Hokies in the national championship game.
What a game.
I was there for all that. Worked there for a couple years, then went over to Jacksonville, and that's where I spent the most time in my broadcast career. I got to Jacksonville in 2000. I left the TV station in 2009, but left Jacksonville in 2010.
Okay.
Which is just kind of get out of the business, because in 2008 I'd been the weekend guy there for so long. Mm-hmm. And the economy tanked, and I knew that I had a target on my back, because I was by virtue of being in that position for so long, my salary kept getting bumped up.
Sure.
And I just knew that they didn't want to pay that position that. So it was a perfect excuse for them to not renew my contract. Got into PR and marketing a little bit, made it back to California because I wanted to be closer to home. Mm-hmm. And that's when I kind of found out CrossFit was doing broadcasting. So I went to the games as a fan in 2011, and it was a killer cage event. And I was in the crowd with my former college roommate, who I reconnected with through CrossFit. That's a whole other story.
Nice.
But I remember looking at the floor, and it was Miranda Oldroyd and Rory McKernan with ESPN mics. I went, what the hell is this? How do I get involved in this? They're actually doing broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And I went home And I sent off a random email to just media@crossfit.com explaining who I was, what my background was, love to get involved. Didn't hear anything. That was like August 2011. Fast forward to February 2012, in the gym I was working out at in Sacramento, the owner said, hey, if you want to go get your L1, I'll pay for half of it and you can coach and then you can just have a free membership. I was like, awesome, I'll do that. Went to the University of Nevada, Reno to get my L1, and Pat Sherwood was there. And Pat at the time, who's become a great friend of mine, was part of the media team. And during lunch, I said, I have got to go talk to this guy. Like, if I'm going to do this, I have got to go just take, what's the worst thing he's going to say? No.
Right.
Walked up to him. He was nice enough to talk to me about kind of the media thing. I explained who I was. He said, send me your contact information. I'll forward it on. And usually that is, more often than not, that's someone blowing you off. 100%. But to Pat's credit, he didn't. And I owe him so big for that. He forwarded my information. And then I didn't hear anything until about, I think it was April of 2012. And this was when, people who've been around the sport for a while, this was the first time that the games were going to be live on ESPN or an ESPN network. So in order to prep for that, CrossFit decided to take a broadcast team to the Central East Regional, because that's where Rich Froning was, and Julie Fouché was there at the time, and it was the biggest star power, and they were going to do a test broadcast there to get ready for the game. So I got a call. I was sitting in my cubicle job at the ad agency I work for, the PR agency, and I got a call from a Las Vegas phone number on my cell phone. I said, I don't know who this is, but I'll pick it up. And it was Roy McKernan. So I immediately dash out the side door to kind of go downstairs and take the call. And Roy said, hey man, really interested to see if you would want to help us out at the Central East Regional. I've had your email for a while. I've been meaning to reach out to you, but we have an opportunity now if you want to be part of it. And I was like, I was trying to think of a word faster than yes.
Sure.
And I said, absolutely, I'll do it. I don't care what it is. And he goes, we want you to maybe do play-by-play for the women's competition. I went, perfect, I'm in. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. That was my first opportunity. And then I helped them with their regional coverage as well. Because back then there were, I think, 17 regionals, and they decided
a lot.
They decided at that time to do like a video recap of every heat, every event of every regional that they put up on games.crossfit.com. And it was just like a monumental task. And I don't know how pulled it off, but I agreed to help them with that. So I would get off work in Sacramento on Friday, and I would drive straight to Santa Cruz, and then we would I'd help them out for a couple days with their coverage, and I'd drive back home and work a full week. And then that kind of kept up. They wanted me to do the games in 2012. I said, absolutely, I'm doing that. And then they hired me full time in 2013. So that's awesome. Sort of the long version. Sorry.
Awesome. And so you started CrossFit at some point in there. So you started CrossFit in Jacksonville, correct?
I did. Yeah. 2007.
Nice. And did you drink the Kool-Aid like everyone else? Were you locked in all in?
100%. I was so in. I remember there was a guy I worked with in the sports department whose wife was a personal trainer. And she had just started doing CrossFit with her clients. And he said, hey man, you should really check this out. Like it's awesome. It's this new thing that CrossFit.com. You go to the website. It's just one workout a day. You do it. You follow the program. I go, okay, that sounds cool. I'll check it out. And I went to the website, and I remember it was something sort of just like 5x5 shoulder press or something.
Right.
And I went, that's it? I didn't, that doesn't seem revolutionary.
Right.
And sort of just forgot about it. And then later on I said, yeah, okay, I need to get a trainer. I need to change something in my fitness. And I went, so I agreed I say, hey, I'd love to hire your wife for some personal training sessions. And went in, she started, okay, here's how you squat. Didn't know, no one ever taught me how to do that.
Sure.
You learned some rudimentary stuff. Like, okay, here's like kind of let's try a kipping pull up. And the first workout she had me do was just 10 rounds. It was just 10 rounds of Cindy, and it nearly killed
me. I heard that on the other podcast. That's a mean first workout. She was trying to prove a point.
She was, and then it crushed me. And I went, okay, I'm in. And I was like everybody else. I was looking at websites. I was watching videos. I was, trying to learn movements by watching, Bergener's stuff. Like, how do I get better at the clean? And I was in there all the time, just trying to learn. And I went to my Globo gym, and I'd work out and do CrossFit stuff. And that's how it started. And I fell in love with it because I had never seen results after a while sticking with it, because it's kind of snowballs, right? You get into it and you start to enjoy it, and then you see results and you're like, man, I've been doing this wrong my whole life. And then you get more into it. And that's sort of what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, I can relate 100%. I was in the bodybuilding world pretty aggressively through college, and I hated CrossFit. I was in the strength world right after college, going into that in 2008 to 2010. And it was just, I guess, 2012, and it just wasn't the thing. Who does 30 clean and jerks for time? That's stupid. It's a power movement, blah, blah, blah. And then I drank the Kool-Aid and went to school, and it became my whole life. And so from 2000, on a scale from 0 to 10, how good or bad was CrossFit Media from an organizational standpoint when you started compared to what you had done?
It was a 1. Well, you know what? I take that back. I'll give them like a 3 or a 4 based on just the
out of effort.
Just because they didn't know what they were doing, but damn, they were trying. They were like working very hard. And I remember showing up. It was so funny because I think I'm trying to remember the timeline of things. I think I actually helped them cut and voice videos before I went to the Central East Regional to actually do play-by-play. And I remember showing up and looking around and being like, these guys have no idea what they're doing. And I'm just going to shut up because I'm not going to be the greasy wheel. I'm just going to do my job and try to help out where I can. And then I remember getting to Columbus, Ohio to do the Central East Regional. And they had,
this is in 2012 still.
This is in 2012 when they were trying to figure out who could do what. And we were all in this room. And I mean, like Matt Chan was there. Josh Everett was there. Justin Judkins, who else? Tanya Wagner. I think Bill Grundler was there. You know, all these OGs. Pat Sherwood was there. Rory McKernan. I don't know if Miranda was there, but it was like everybody was in the same spot. And we had like 10 different announcers. And they were just like rotating people in left and right just to see who could do it. And I'm like, I have never seen anything like this. You know, it's like, I remember Mike Roth, who is still the director, I worked with for 12 years, great guy. And another guy by the name of Eric Barnhart, who is the producer, who's still around, another guy I've known for 12 years through this whole sport. Mike Roth goes, all right, raise your hand if you're an announcer. And like 30 people's hands went up, and he just looked at Barnhart. He goes, have fun with that. And because you know, no one knew what they were doing. And that's when I realized, like, man, these guys really want to, they really want to be good at this, but they just don't know what they're doing. So
that's wild. And so it seems like, so from then you did the games in 2012. And so you went full time at the games, after the games?
After the games, 2013, January 2013 is when they.
Gotcha. And so from 2013 to 2018, you didn't do any other announcing, right? You weren't doing any freelance stuff or anything like that.
I was
full-time CrossFit. Yep. Would you say that you are the biggest main influence in the progression of the media, at least quickly? Because they put out so much content in that era, and with it, what it sounds like is they didn't know what they were doing, but the amount of content they were putting out was just mind-blowing. And so what does that look like from your end? How much influence did you have there? And I guess when did you become the greasy wheel? Because at some point you did, for sure.
I think to say that I was the biggest influence would not be giving enough people like the credit.
Sure.
Marston Sawyers and Heber Cannon, like those guys that worked a ton, you know, and they put out a lot of stuff. I think where I was probably the most influential is just in the sort of the update show and the way the games were covered.
RIP. That show was the best.
I'm some of the most fun I've had in my career working on that show. CrossFit just mentioned Joe Novello. He was a big influence. And Joe was one of these guys who was one of the first people that they brought in who had a background in other broadcasting. So he could say, okay, here's how we do it here. Here's how we can apply it here. Then I came in and I tried to help with that a little bit too. And then we got a guy by the name of Charlie Doobie who had worked at ESPN as an intern / producer. He came in and they started to get people in who had backgrounds outside of CrossFit that had done this in other settings. And that's really what helps us. But I'd say my influence was really confined to sort of that space.
Okay.
And then, you know, they had really talented people who were cranking out content on the other side that I never really interacted with. Who,
okay.
You look what Mars and Heber have done.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And those guys,
those guys They put out
Fantastic.
their content is lightning fast.
It
Whether
is.
you like it or not, their ability to turn it around is insane.
They grind. They
Yeah.
work really hard.
A lot of caffeine, a lot of rain, a lot of rain. So the 2012, 2018 era, from that point, do you feel like there was like a peak of where media was just flowing and it was the best, where you saw the moon, like it was going? Obviously we can say 18 before the reaping and or whatever. And so, but is there a point there where you felt like it was the best? And then I do want to dig into the update show, because that shit was my favorite.
Yeah. 2018, I think it was. And it was because of everything that was going on around us. For the first time in 2018, we got regionals on network television.
Right.
CBS Sports Network aired, and I can't remember if CBS did or not. We may have been on the weekend on CBS, but I really can't remember. I know for a fact CBS Sports Network was.
Mm-hmm.
We got the Atlantic Regional that was in West Palm Beach, on CBS Sports Network.
It's crazy.
And they wanted, they wanted content previewing the regionals and the games. So we did that. I remember leaving West Palm thinking, this is it. Like, we're on the launch pad now. They want this. They want the rest of, like, they're going to want stuff moving forward. And that was sort of the scuttlebutt, that they were really impressed. They want to do more in 2019 around the Open, around regionals, around the CrossFit Games. CBS was a great partner for the CrossFit Games that year too. They really helped us bump up our production, and they were an active partner. It wasn't just like, here's some airtime, fill it.
Sure.
I would see the representatives at the competitions, and they were super into it. They wanted to learn about it. And that really felt like finally we have arrived. And then that's what made the timing of everything that happened in 2018 so hard to wrap your head around, because like it was right there. We were at the goal line.
I know.
And it just
makes me sad.
So I'd say, 2016 through, I'd even say 2014 through 2018 was probably the height of it, peaking in 2018. But there were some really good years in there, and it was because Tony Budding was a driving force early on. He left in 2014, but that sort of that drive and that vision continued with guys like Joe Novello, and Justin Berg was always super into being able to want to grow the sport. There are a lot of people who are committed to it and did a really good job. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, like I said in the beginning, I'm a CrossFit optimist. And so it was rough to see on the outside, for sure. And so 2018, the reaping happens, and, everything is upended and the landscape completely changes. How far in advance? You guys got to the games and you knew it was coming, right?
I knew something was coming.
Sure.
So I remember going into the games. Joe Novello came into my office at CrossFit. He's like, "Hey man, here's what's going on. I don't know what it's going to look. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think we're probably going to be okay." Cause it sounds like at the time there was some conversations being had with different people about money that I wasn't privy to.
Sure.
And I said, okay, well, I remember I said, do I need to dust off my resume? You guys, I don't think we're there yet. Okay. We knew going into the games that the qualifying stage was going to change. We knew regionals were going away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what most of us thought was going to happen is that we would do open, and then what kind of like we have now, partners were doing qualifying events, and then that's how you would get to the CrossFit Games. That's kind of what it seemed like was going to happen. And then 2018 in Madison, I remember being called into the production trailer with Joe and Charlie, who I mentioned earlier. And again, we were very privy to what was happening. It was sort of this up and down, but never did we think this was going to get all just wiped away. And Joe said, "Hey, I got great news. It looks like Facebook is coming to the table with a lot of money. They're interested in being our exclusive streaming partners. They're interested in this." And we said, "Great, okay, good. That's off my mind. We got that going. Let's just go do our jobs here. We don't have to worry about it." And then the week after we got back from the games is when the first round of cuts happened.
Right.
And given the way that those happened and what was being said, I was like, yeah, we're not far behind.
Sure. And so it's such an interesting thing that, obviously we hear, and I follow Talking Elite Fitness pretty closely over the years. And so you talked a lot about this when it went down as much as you could. And it's it seems now more interesting that it would all happen, especially with these big providers and these broadcast channels coming in, because they bring money to the table. And so do you feel like it was all financial if the money was maybe knocking on the door for us to partner with these bigger places? And like CrossFit said, that IMG was getting close to being a part of it. I didn't even know until
they talked to me. I talked to them for a couple months after everything got fired, and it was the IMG thing was they wanted me to be part of it with some content they were creating. I was like, great, sounds fantastic. And it was like, hey, the deal's almost done. It's going to take a couple more months. And if you remember, they were the ones who put on the Mid-Atlantic CrossFit Challenge from Washington, D.C. There was a stream, and the IMG
the Mac
on.
Yeah.
Because I think that deal had already been made, and so they were committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it didn't go any further. Then just the bottom fell out of it.
Man, that's unfortunate. So Talking Elite Fitness starts. Talk to me about that. How did you and Tommy get together and create, this platform, and what did that look like in 2018? Well, I guess even before that. So tell me about, how you got the news and then leading into that.
I got the news that I was getting let go, and I had to have a surgery I have a deviated septum. So in 2018, sorry, my dogs are barking at something. I had to have deviated septum surgery. So I went in for my nose surgery. I got home, and I'm just like feeling miserable. I got all this stuff jammed in my head. I can't breathe. And then I remember I got a call that, hey, we're getting let go tomorrow, or some other day. I can't remember. It was like at the end of the week. I said, all right, great. Well, now I'm
perfect.
Yeah. And we pretty much knew it was coming. So that's how I found out. And then we all went in and had to sit down and with various people and officially be let go. And that is when the conversations with IMG for me started happening.
Okay.
Where one of the representatives was calling me, like, hey, look, we're working on this deal. We're trying to put a content team together. We want you to be part of it. Just don't know how long this deal is going to take. And Tommy and I said, okay, how do we stay involved in this space so when things do come back, we're still kind of front and center doing our thing. And we settled on a podcast because that was the one thing that we could do where it didn't require a lot of resources, but we felt we could do it at the level that was acceptable to us. And that's how the whole thing started. I think the first episode we recorded with Marston and Heber in Marston's kitchen.
Yep. I remember it.
And we recorded it a couple times actually, because the first one was we're like, we can't be this. Like, we were pretty negative. We got to tone that down. So we recorded it again, and, we got a pretty good response from it. And then at the time we started the Inside Elite Fitness thing, the video thing, because we're trying to keep the update show kind of alive. And people who were working on that were just doing it for free. And that we put out some stuff. It just was not sustainable because we couldn't pay anybody. And they all had other jobs that they had to worry about. So that kind of died. And we just kept the podcast going. And at the time too, it was a different space. And we were sort of the first people in. There's so many content creators now that has certainly changed the landscape. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's nothing against anybody who's doing it. But it was like, we were just kind of the first. It was a good opportunity for us to start because there was nothing else at the time.
Sure. And for you guys to start, it seems like the IMG thing would have been the perfect situation for where CrossFit wanted to go. They wanted to stop funding all of it. And then they wanted to Greg said it, they want to support outside businesses to continue to help support CrossFit. Right. And so the affiliate model, right? Like, you just pay a little bit and then you get to do all the stuff. And so do you know why the IMG thing fell through?
I don't. I wasn't really involved with that. I don't know if IMG wanted a piece of like the affiliate business. I've heard that was sort of the sticking point, but it was one of those things where it was such a roller coaster, because one week it was looking great, the next week it wasn't. One week it was looking good, and then the next week it wasn't, and it just kept going like that until finally it was completely done. So
yeah,
and it was like months after. I think it was like March or April of 2019 when it finally died.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a long time. And so Talking Elite Fitness is rocking and rolling. You guys are cruising. And so, like you said, initially, I feel like Talking Elite Fitness maybe stayed very uninfluenced by CrossFit as a headquarters. And then I feel like at some point, maybe the Rosa era, and we'll get to that point, but that it kind of, it went really, really, really positive all the time, and maybe not talking about some of the controversy. And is that on purpose? Is that just like
Well, I think that's sort of who we are.
Sure.
And look, I still have I mean, I don't know if I do anymore, but I had a working relationship with them.
Right.
There were things that, because of everyone we were sort of entangled with doing business, like we had to be very careful with things that we could and could not talk about. And I felt like we could talk about anything. It's just how we did it.
Sure.
Was sort of the needle we had to thread there.
Right. Yeah.
There were some things that if I look back on it, I go, man, we probably should have tackled that a little bit differently. Probably should have handled that. Like there were some things we could have done there. Maybe do our due diligence a little bit better on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not someone who, think I can speak for Tommy too, and certainly Lauren. Like we're not looking to flame people. We're looking to say, okay, here's what's the problem. How do we get all sides of this, and how do we present as much information as we possibly can to let people make their own decisions about it? Now,
sure.
There are things that I absolutely disagree with that have been done from a broadcast standpoint, as far as like a style thing. And my rule is sort of like, I will not say anything on the show that I won't say to someone's face. So if I have a criticism of the way that a broadcast is constructed or a decision that is made, I will, whatever I say on the show, I will say to Dawn or to Dave or whoever is in charge of making those decisions, like, hey, here's what I thought. And that's where we draw the line. I mean, you have to be able to criticize, and I think we do, but I feel like we don't attack.
Sure.
And I think there was at the time, given how tumultuous those times were, with the sale and all that stuff, like people were so confused, and we were just like, how do we make sense of all this and not just spin out of control?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It seemed like a lot, and it's a perfect segue. Thanks for managing the podcast here. But the sale happens, right? So Greg says what he says, and whether you're in Greg's camp or not, or whatever it is, the sale happened, right? And it seems that he was between a rock and a hard place to make that sale, even though everyone felt like he would never do it, right? Like he was going to take it. He was going to take it all the way and let it burn with him, right? And so if that was the case, and so, but he did sell, and he sold to Eric Rosa and Berkshire Hathaway, which I think none of us really kind of understood what that looked like early on.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
And so talk to me about that. So listening to your 2022 podcast, right? Like there was a lot of references in there that may not have aged super well, as we have sort of seen, but how did you feel during the sale in 2020? Was it 2021? I guess it was.
I think it was.
Yeah, 2021. And how did you feel about it? And
it had been 2020. Wasn't that the game? The games were in Morgan Hill, and they were out here in Northern California in COVID year, because Eric Rosa was there. I remember that's the first time.
Yeah, he was there. So it was right before the games in 2020. It was that summer. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think John Woolley did a really good job on his latest video of explaining that. And there were some things that I think a lot of us thought, me included, that Eric Rosa had more power than he actually did. Didn't fully understand the deal that was made and who was involved and how it was all going to be run.
Sure.
So yeah, there were some things that we fully, and I think a lot of people fully did not understand about that. We went to Eric's house. Tommy and I did, I think, September of 2020 to interview him, and he was very gracious and very open about things. And I was a fan. Like, he seemed, everything he was saying was right. We're going to work on this. We're going to work on that. You talk to people who had been around for a long time, who had talked to him, who said, I have a positive feeling about him. I'm optimistic about it. I didn't hear a lot of negativity around Eric. I just didn't.
Right.
And that's sort of what we were going on. Hindsight's obviously 2020, and had we had a better grasp of what that deal looked like, and what, and again, referencing what John said, how it wasn't very transparent about what the real situation was.
Right.
Maybe there's different questions that get asked, and we don't miss some of the things that we.
Sure. Yeah. Seemed like he was just kind of a front man, right? In the general situation. He fit what was needed in the CrossFit space from the struggles we were having as a whole.
Well, and we all want, like, look, this was, and I remember when it happened, you read the guy's resume, where he came from, and you said, this is the perfect situation. Right. This is not someone from outside the ecosystem who's coming in here looking to make a quick buck. This is a guy who's an affiliate owner, who has money. Not trust the ball guys. Who has money, who cares. This looks like best case scenario.
Right.
And, it just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't work. And I don't know why. I mean, it seems like him firing Dave was the sort of the thing that tipped everything
Right.
In the opposite direction. So yeah, I don't know what went wrong there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems like he, had like his personal things that he was struggling with, and obviously didn't have the power that maybe we once thought. And so leaning into that, right, and a lot of the things that we thought and things that were happening then, Miles to Madison and the media that was coming out at that point, it seemed like we had a shot, right, to just right the ship from a media perspective. And now it seems like we don't. And it's just like turning in the opposite direction. And we know the goal of a PE is to make more money, right, and grow. And obviously cleaning up books, etc., prepping for a sale, whatever we can suspect is potentially happening. How do you foresee the media for the last 3 years, right? And I guess we'll come back. So you're just a contractor now, correct? And so you're not privy to.
I've been since 2018.
2018, and so you don't see any of the theoretical inside stuff and directions and decision making. Maybe a little
indirectly, a little bit. You mentioned them, Miles and Madison and things like that. CrossFit had they more or less indirectly brought back a lot of the people who were part of the media team that they let go in 2018, who were still creating content for them. And Miles and Madison was a good example of that. That was created mostly by people who had worked with CrossFit before, but now it was just a different sort of contractual situation, the way they worked it all out.
Got it.
And when Eric was quote unquote in charge, I remember being told, hey, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming. Like, they really want to invest in this. This is going to be good. And then all that changed. Now, why or how, I don't know, but it just did.
Right.
And I think it's kind of what you were talking about, is that they looked at the money they were spending and the return they were getting on it, and trying to, I guess, make the business look more streamlined. This was an expense they felt like they just couldn't justify anymore.
Yeah. It almost feels currently that they're just withholding media. It feels like the media is there, and it feels like they're just not putting it out, or they're just dwindling the team down, and I don't know, I try to stay very optimistic, like I said, on all the things. And I hope that this is to sell. And when we sell, then, I don't know, whoever buys it will push the media back in the right direction. So how do you feel about the current state? I guess that's probably the best question. Like, what's your strong opinion on what we're doing in 2024?
I don't know how to feel about it, because I don't know what the strategy is. And I've said this in an interview with Don Fall. Just because I don't understand something doesn't mean it's wrong.
Sure.
I don't understand what the approach to media is right now. And this is specifically around the games. And if you look at the CrossFit Games YouTube channel or the CrossFit Games Instagram site, or Instagram account, it's mostly just like the YouTube channel is mostly highlights from prior events. Instagram, they make some announcements on, show some athlete highlights, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of original content around like athlete features, like Mars and Heber used to do with I think it's called Road to the Games, that kind of stuff. And a lot of that now is being done by the training camps themselves. Look at the stuff that Mayhem puts out. It's either high quality. You get to see, they check in with their athletes. Proven does the same thing. All that content has kind of been siphoned out to the training camps. So I don't know. I just don't know what CrossFit's trying to accomplish with it. I don't, I see they have a presence. Their people have a presence at semifinals. They have a presence at the games, obviously, open announcements, things like that. But I don't ever see the fruits of that labor.
Right. I don't think any of us do.
Yeah. And so again, just because I don't understand it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Sure.
I remember asking Don specifically about the CrossFit podcast that they have, because that seems to be the only thing consistently that they were putting out. Well, you have two YouTube accounts, in the CrossFit one and the games one, that have, I think, close to 3 million followers.
Total followers.
Yet, and this is the exact question I asked Don, yet you've taken the podcast and you've created a separate channel that has 5,000 subscribers. Why would you not put that on the other two accounts? And he couldn't answer he goes, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But it's things like that I don't understand. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but if someone can explain it to me, why that's being done, okay. But it just seems like they just don't care about media. It's just not something that's on their radar right now, because it does cost a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. And man, it just seems like self-sabotage almost. Like it's there. We know that people are there. We know the content is being created in general. Like the videos are being shot and the photos are being taken. Like Colton's touch and go snatch for a great example. That didn't show up on for like 96 hours. Like it showed up on Wednesday. Like it should have been up in 30 seconds, right?
100%.
They all have access to Instagram. And so with the goal of selling, does this like hinder them even more? Right.
I don't know. I don't know if it does or not, because I think I don't know enough about this world. I know a little bit about it, but I think it's the bottom line is someone's looking like, okay, what's the investment? What's the return I can get on that investment? Media doesn't seem to be part of that equation. I would,
right.
And maybe, like you said, maybe whoever the next person is looks at this and says, hey, this is what we want to do. We actually do need to have a media presence. And it would make sense because every other sport, and I'm talking about the sports side here. Every other sport has a media arm. I mean, you mentioned the timeliness of things. And I don't know how many people out there are wrestling fans, but if you follow the WWE social media accounts, you don't have to watch any of their shows because the stuff that they put out is immediate. Like I can tell you right now, like on a Monday night, I can tell you what happened on Raw just by following their social media account. They put stuff. The NFL does the same thing. All these others for the NHL, whoever you follow, it's all immediate. There's a value in having that arm to your company. So I don't know how. I wish I had the answer, but I just don't, as to why it has just been completely removed.
Right. Yeah. CrossFit's great. Just the next question, like, are the wrong people in charge?
I don't know who's in charge.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think I know, but I don't know for certain.
Right. Yeah. It seems like it's kind of not really a ladder, more of a spot graph, kind of just like it's a little there and a little there, and someone might have control over it. And so there is media being put out, which is kind of nice, and it's Dave's. And so how do you feel about that? Obviously, I think everyone's really positive about it. Why didn't CrossFit do this?
I don't know. That's another thing I don't understand, is that Dave now and John Woolley again has done and if you guys haven't, go watch his stuff. I think
they're fantastic.
He's doing a great job pointing things out, doing it in a way that doesn't seem like he's attacking anybody, but trying to be very fair, very, very, what's the word? Calm, not like flying off the handle on things, which I know we all like to see, but I think he's done a really good job of laying some things out and saying, here's why this is not good. Here's what we should do. And here's, constantly varied conversations. That's absolutely the one.
Yeah. He's doing a really good job.
He's doing fantastic. Sorry, what was the question? I totally just lost my train of thought here.
Why isn't CrossFit doing the videos? Like what, if we could just postulate any type of idea of why they wouldn't do the same thing. Cause Dave spoke with Don about it.
You're talking about Dave. That's right. What he's doing. I think that's great. So why wouldn't that stuff be put out on CrossFit's official channel? It's more Dave's official channel.
Right. And it is, they repost it on their YouTube, but why wouldn't it go there first? Right. And the repost, because it's just not,
I don't know. I don't get that. You have 3 million people on these two accounts like that.
Right.
And again, just someone needs to explain it to me. I just don't understand. I'm saying you're wrong.
Sure.
Just explain it to me why that's the way.
Right.
I think what Dave's doing is great. I liked his Monday weekend reviews. He takes some questions. Obviously, there's some that he doesn't want to answer. But that kind of just exchange, you need more of it. It wasn't that long ago when CrossFit was doing some regular press conferences. Now, I don't think they did them frequently enough. I thought they should have been every week, and I thought they
press conferences.
Yeah.
It's
like
definitely.
When I covered the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, we were over the facility, 4 out of 5 days,
right,
talking to coaches, players, everything, because they wanted to update you on what was going on. Now, this is a little bit of a different animal
design, sure.
But I think, and I remember telling Justin Berg this, like, you guys cannot over communicate right now. You can't. You should be over communicating right now. You should have people be like, okay, we're sick of hearing from you. That's good, because that means now you've completely and totally made up for what you have been doing, which is usually radio silence and just letting that vacuum get filled by somebody else. But I miss the press conferences. Like, why can't we do that more often?
Sure. So yeah, CrossFit, do you want to start this podcast? I think you should pull you on. You have a lot of good points.
I've watched that many a times. I just don't know who it is.
I know. Yeah. So if you had the magic wand and you could right the ship, what changes? How do you do it?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Okay. First thing I would do is I would separate the games from the affiliate side.
Okay. All right. We were going to get there. I was just talking about media, but that's okay. That's where we were going. So let's just start there then.
Number one. And I think I've said this before. I think what CrossFit should do is they should license out the coverage of the season and the running of the events to somebody else. Charge a flat fee for, okay, you can have, the CrossFit will still do the open. That makes money for them. And if they want, they can still put on the games because that's their big thing. But whatever happens in the middle, you can, whatever happens in the middle, someone else can do that. You can cover it. You can pay us. And let's just say for the sake of argument, that's a flat fee. Like you pay us $1 million. You can have our name. You get to use it in exchange for, let's say it's Prestige Worldwide comes in and says, hey, we want to run these events. We want to broadcast and we want to do all that. Okay, Prestige Worldwide, you pay us a fee. We license it to you. In return, you get to you keep all ticket sales. You get to monetize all advertising. You get to monetize your streams however you want.
Right.
CrossFit will have some sort of oversight just to make sure that the brand is being represented the way they want it to. And now you have 6 events after the open that act as like a series where you qualify people to the games. So that's completely odd because that's where CrossFit spends that in the games. That's where they spend most of their money.
Right.
Now that becomes a money-making opportunity for them, and it's a hard cost. They understand every year we're getting this licensing fee from this company to put this on. That I think would be first and foremost, because now, you're not losing money and putting on events. Like it's just, we're going to make money off the open. We're going to make this fee. We have our affiliate fees. So those are all fixed costs.
Right.
The next thing I do is I'd find a way to like reinvest in media. But I think the biggest problem that they're facing right now is that they have given up they've ceded so much ground. Right? And there are a lot of really good content creators out there right now. A lot of good ones, plenty of really good, you got, hell, I could spend 30 minutes like naming everybody, but everyone's super talented. They put out really good stuff.
Yep.
So how do you take that ground back? And the only way to do it is, I think, to make a significant investment in doing like professional media. So where you have something that looks like you could put it on a sports network or something like that. So it looks, it has the feel of like an NFL network or ESPN, maybe pared down from that, but it clearly separates itself from the quality from a production standpoint from what you're seeing now. And again, I'm not like the stuff that's being put out now. There's so much good stuff out there.
Right.
A lot of talented people. So finding the money to do that, and maybe you get that from the licensing fee, but understanding like investing in that helps your brand. I think there are a lot of people that found CrossFit through the games, through the media that was created back in 2010 to 2018, got into it because of that.
Yep.
And I think you have to understand like how, like if we're really going to do this right, let's invest in it. Let's do it right. Let's take back this ground that we ceded to everybody else, and let's find a way to monetize it appropriately. And that's a huge challenge. But I do think that from the sports side, that it would be smart for them to
split
it again. Yeah, I think they should split it. I really think they should, and just let someone else run it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely leaning that way. I think that's definitely the play, especially because, well, sport feeds into affiliate and affiliates feeds into sport. I think that for them to succeed, it's challenging for them to succeed linearly together because they pull from each other from a resources perspective in general. Right. So Magic Wand, split the company, invest in media. And so there's a lot of media around there in camps, right? And then just third-party media that's very generalized. And some of it's really negative and some of it's really positive and some of it's kind of all in between. And so how do you pull the people in, right? The Savans and Hiller and, the other ones that are doing their thing and seeming to be doing really, really well, kind of like on the coattails of the turmoil that CrossFit is struggling with. Do you feel like they are inherently, or I guess innately, trying to build the sport in a positive manner and just being perceived wrong? Or do you feel like they're tearing it down? Get a really direct question.
I think that those guys are, I think everybody in this space cares and wants to make it better. I don't think anybody's trying to tear anything down. I really don't. I think if you asked everybody, it's like they love this. They want to see it work. They just everyone has different approaches on how to do that. So I I don't think anybody wants to see this burn and be like, aha, killed CrossFit. Good. Now move on to the next thing. I think they all want to see this succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those outlets can still exist. And in the past, when CrossFit did have a media voice, they did, just not on this scale. I mean, the Arm & Hammer was a thing.
Sure.
And there were some other people out there who did stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You still need that. Like other sports still have outlets that cover them.
100%.
The NFL still has local TV stations and ESPN and sports radio and everybody, but they still have their own wing of media. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of figuring out if they're going to do this again. What it CrossFit mean? What's it going to
Mm-hmm.
look like? And how are they going to do it so that it helps cut through and elevate above everything else? So that it's like they are viewed as, okay, we're going to go here. We're actually going to get some really good stuff that we're not going to get elsewhere. And
Right.
not to keep going back to Wooly, but he mentioned this is like the CrossFit Journal, like should be where if they brought that back. That should be where you get all your information first, and then everyone goes from there. But now you have these great the Morning Chalk, Barbell Spin. They do good jobs of getting those stories out there. Barbell Spin's done a fantastic job of getting stuff before a lot of people have had it. And like that shouldn't be happening. So and it's no offense to, I'm not saying anything against Barbell Spin. I think those guys do a great job, but they should not be the first ones to report it. CrossFit should always be the first ones to report it. And it's a really hard thing to solve, and it's going to take a lot of resources and commitment, but I think it can be done. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting, right? When we talk about resources, and then you see Andrew Hiller, who puts out a video a day that has substance to it, whether you like it or not, that's irrelevant. They're deep and they're well thought out and they're creative in general. And you can hate him because he's really negative, or you can love him because, he's bringing out the sour points, but that's one person and he puts out so much content. Do we really need that much resources, or do we just need people that are just willing to really dig their knuckles into the ground and just crawl their way and work 100 times harder than everyone's working right now? Because the amount of content that's being put out could be done by one person. Like in like just like the amount of posting on social media and YouTube, one person, 2 hours a week. Like it's so low. I don't know. It's so mind blowing to me. I just can't fathom how so little is coming out with the potential bandwidth that CrossFit does have.
Well, I think it depends on what you want it to look like.
Sure.
And when everything happened in 2018, the idea is that we're going to elevate other media outlets. And like the first guy who was kind of let in was Arm & Hammer when everything happened. Like I remember him, he came to the office. It was a little awkward. It's like, hey man, like we're not even out of here yet. And they're bringing this guy in.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's going to be your business model, it's like, okay, we're not going to certainly invest in it, but we're going to elevate these content creators who are making stuff. That's certainly one way to do it. But if you're looking for something that's more of like, I'm talking like a Sports Center type thing, or a show where you show highlights and you have the kind of news recap, that's something that is not being done at the level that I think you would want it to be done to
of course.
Really
Yeah. Of course.
But as far as like athlete features and things like that, Andrew did a great one. Hiller did a great one on Haley Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Another one coming. Like those are fantastic. Like if CrossFit wants to elevate that, they certainly can. And if that's the model, like we're just going to aggregate all this stuff and put it on our website. Okay, great. That's fine. That's a strategy.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not just do that?
Free. It's free. It doesn't cost anything.
No, it doesn't. But then they can't monetize it. Right. So if they're looking to make money off of it, that's certainly one way they could do it. And and like you said, there's a lot out there that they could absolutely be elevating.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it depends on what they want it to look like.
Right. And so you mentioned this earlier of kind of like threading the line with talking elite fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And so why, obviously Hiller has his stuff taken away, but Savan works very hard to thread the line to maintain the behind the scenes, and seems like it's taken away sometimes and then it's not. And then good thing he's friends with Dave and that kind of stuff. And so, what is that line and why is it so sensitive? I think is the question. Like, why can't we be critics in general? Why does everyone in the media space so nervous about threading that line in the wrong direction and getting all of their their stuff removed.
Well, I think even when I worked at CrossFit, they were not good at taking criticism. Like it
Sure.
was, and I think that sort of permeated the whole company. It's like if someone disagreed with you or that, it was like a lot of times it was time to go scorched earth.
See you later. Right.
Yeah. And maybe some of that is still left over. Like you need to have media that's critical of you. And there's a fine line, I think, sometimes between being critical, feeling like someone's being critical of you, and feeling like someone's attacking you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe sometimes CrossFit views criticism as attacking
every time.
They sort of have the same like knee-jerk reaction to it.
Sure.
So the way that we've tried to handle it is that I will not say anything here that I wouldn't say to someone's face that was on. So if I had a criticism of Don Fall, if Don comes on the show, I'm going to echo that to him and see how he answers it.
Mm-hmm.
And if that gets us kicked out, then I guess that gets us kicked out. But that's something where I can look in the mirror and say, okay, at least I did this I tried to do it the right way. I wasn't trying to just attack someone and flame someone.
Yep.
But CrossFit too kind of created this. Like they backed away totally from the space, and it's going to get filled. It's in this world, you create a vacuum of information or communication, it will get filled by something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe they need to sort of start engaging more with the people who are criticizing them. Invite Andrew Hiller on and say, okay, man, let's talk about this publicly for 15, 20 minutes. Let's have a discussion. Can we do that?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, people would be better off for that. Everyone would be better off for that. There needs to be more, I think. These people, and I shouldn't say these people, but people who are critical exist. Like the media exists. So you're not going to get them to go away. So how do you deal with this in a way that it's going to be constructive for everyone?
Right.
And the only way that I've ever found to do that is to talk to someone directly.
Conversations.
You'll find, I've had a couple, like a great conversation with Andrew Hiller a couple of weeks ago about when he knew that I wasn't going to do the games, and that was before I announced it. I had a really good conversation with him about some stuff.
Right.
People are different behind keyboards and in videos than they are when you get them in person. If you can just talk directly to people, you start seeing them as a person, and you're a little more willing to maybe meet in the middle here and
sure,
common ground. And I just think there needs to be more of that, as opposed to we're right, you're wrong, that's it, done. If you criticize us, you're not coming in.
Sure. Yeah, I think I've definitely heard that from a lot of people that have met Andrew in person and have seen his stuff. Like, he's very open that this is clickbait stuff, but then within the videos of itself, it's always, I don't know. I think it is at the crux of trying to move CrossFit in the right direction always.
Yeah. I think everybody who there is not a content creator in this space who doesn't care and who doesn't want the best.
For sure.
I really believe that everyone just has a different opinion on how that needs to be done. And that's good. Like we should be listening to all those and figuring out, okay, where's the common ground here and what's the best way to move forward?
Sure. So obviously, everyone talks about controversial topics and things like that. And so Hiller released his video on Annette and the DEI situation. And so it seems like that has a big influence on media, but I also seem like it's behind a big smoke screen and we don't really know. Do you have any thoughts on, is that a limiting factor, or is that something that, do you feel like someone in her position has no CrossFit background should be able to make the decisions that she's able to make, right? Especially with what you've seen over the years, that we're successful because of the love that everyone in the business has for CrossFit and what it stands for, and, carrying the world's most vexing problem.
Yeah. I don't know if I have enough information to accurately answer that question. Sure. I didn't see his video on it. I don't know what her specific power is. I don't know a whole lot about that situation. I really wouldn't. I don't think anything I would have to say about it would be enlightening in any way, shape, or form.
All right. So we had our magic wand. We've made the changes, and so where do you see? We made the changes, and that's where we want it to go. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the direction we want it to go. So as it stands currently, where do you see it going? What's your 3 to 5 year prediction?
That's a really tough question. I think that, I do have a feeling that the season is going to change again. And Dave has alluded to this about, making the open matter. I think Cross is going to get out of the business of running semifinals. I think they've just realized that this is not and the writing's on the wall there. Last year it was, we're not streaming every event.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're not streaming every day.
Right.
So it's pretty clear that they're not looking to put more into this. And
Sure.
Don Fall even said on the Kettlebells and Cocktails podcast, he's like, we're going to take a meaningful amount of money out of sport.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing, but that's more or less what he
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to change again. I think what should happen is, like I said, it should be licensed out to somebody, and it should become some sort of 5 to 7 event series where athletes maybe qualify through the Open, and then they go to these in-person events. They amass points, and the people with the most points wind up at the games.
Sure.
We more or less know the model that we have now. As much as I love the old Open regionals games days, I think everyone loved that. I think we've probably outgrown that a little bit. We more or less know who's gonna make the games each year, and there are some exceptions because you get some rookies in there, but they're not people who just came out of nowhere. And I'll use the North America East semifinal as an example of that. The 2 rookies on the men's side who made it, Austin Hatfield and Jack Rosema, have been to semifinals 4 times.
Right.
And we're close each time.
Knocking on the door.
But it's not like it was some unknown person came out of the woodwork that we hadn't discovered yet and managed to make it to the games. I think what we need is something where we get the best athletes in the world competing in person more often in big events. And it's like the PGA Tour or NASCAR, where it's these live events, you accumulate points and then you go to a championship, and that's the games.
Sure.
I would love to see that happen.
Right.
Now there's some things in there like, okay, how do you qualify people, and what is that? And people smarter than me can figure that out.
Sure.
But
yeah.
That's where I see it going.
Yeah. And I heard in 2000 and right before Justin Berg got let go, so 2022, and at the end of 2022, I heard that was the plan. Like, it was leaning in that direction in some capacity of a point designed system. And then Justin Berg got let go, and it seems like that kind of flamed out with him, or at least got delayed, right? Maybe it was just delayed to put Dave back into place, and Dave has to do his thing to figure out the direction that they want to go. But I think that would be the best. And so my only caveat to that is, how do we get new people in then? Because no one besides the professionals that are sponsored by, Tier, Rogue, and I don't know, Born Primitive, right? Like the big sponsors that can give real money, can go to 7 events across the world, right? And accumulate their points.
Yeah. I saw, that's a good question. And it's something where I think that's when you bring in some of these events that are maybe smaller events, that you can create a minor league circuit, for lack of a better term, sort of like with the PGA Tour. You have Q School, you have these smaller events. And so underneath the marquee one, you have this qualifying events to where you can earn points to then earn your ticket to get to the main tour. And maybe the Open is part of that whole process.
Sure.
But it encourages people to go compete more in person. There's Matt O'Keefe talked about this on our Death by show last week about disc golf, having this point system to where it was the amount of points an event gives out is based on the strength of field that shows up.
Sure.
So there is a way to do this to where you can have smaller events that can now be part of a bigger system, and aspiring professional CrossFitters can go to these, earn some points, and then get their way onto the tour, and then maybe show up to some of these bigger events and throw down, earn a little money, and possibly earn their way to the games. But I think we all can agree it's like more in-person competition is better. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think 100%. I'm very pro in-person competition. Speaking of competition, we'll transition. So the first workout was released, and how do you feel about Chad as a games event?
So as a games, look, the event itself, to just sit there and have to watch, and I'm guessing they're going to do men and women at the same time, because there's no way you want to do this twice back to back, just like they did with the marathon row.
Sure.
If that's all you're going to watch, it's a boring event. Now, is it a good test? Sure. It's going to jack some people up. And Dave's MO has always been, and this comes from his days as a Navy SEAL, and I asked him about this a few years back, is how his career as a Navy SEAL affects the way that he trains. Dave's MO has always been, and I don't know if Chad is going to be day one or whatever it's going to be. My guess it will be, is that he messes you up on that first day. He doses you up and puts you through the ringer.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a day off, and then you come back Friday, and now the competition begins.
Yep.
And that seems to kind of follow his sort of programming MO. Now,
for sure,
I don't know, just because the event, like the marathon row, was it exciting to see 80 athletes just sitting there going back and forth?
Did you comment the whole 3 hours?
No, but I wanted to. Like, so the way that
I can't remember.
The way that we approach that is like, this is going to be so boring, is that we're just going to peek in every so often, give people an update, maybe do some reports.
Mm-hmm.
And as we got into that event, I realized we can do this. Like we have the resources. We can stay on for 3 hours or however long it took. We can do
3.5. Yeah.
And we didn't. And it's one of my favorite things that we ever did. This is how punchy we were getting doing it, is that if you remember, I don't know who was on site there, but inside the Alliant Energy Center, they had a big scoreboard that showed like all the boats, in the order. And Mike Roth, the director, I remember during one of the breaks, he's like, "Hey man, I'm going to have a replay for you." I'm like, "What the hell are you going to show?" He goes, "I'm going to show the pass." I was like, "How, what?" He was like, "I'm going to just look." And he shows me, we have a monitor up there where we can see replays before they go on air. And it was literally like the scoreboard, and like the two boats were here and they just went, dink. And that was going to be our replay. He's like, "I'm going to do it." I'm like, "Fine, show it. I don't care." And that was a replay of the pass. And we had people on the floor telling great stories about what was going on, like some of the negotiations that were going on between athletes, what they had. And as that event kept going, I'm like, okay, we can cover this and make it interesting. So just because the event itself is boring, which I think we can all agree that 80 people just up and down on a box, not too spectacular. It doesn't mean the broadcast or the presentation has to be boring.
Right.
I'm really interested to see, and I know the people, like, they're already thinking about this. They've been thinking about it for a while because I'm sure they've known about this. What do you do during that event?
Right.
And that is a perfect time to tell different stories around.
For sure.
Introduce staff, tell different stories. Run some. If you made content on these athletes, run some features, and you put the competition in a window, because you're not really going to miss anything until you get. You really don't need to be there till like the final 50 box steps, step ups, to figure out like where the race is. But there's so much you can do during this time as far as storytelling, checking in with different athletes, interviewing people in the booth. I don't think there's a desk show, but if there is, you could have people on the desk. You can talk to people in the crowd. You can, like, there's so much you can do to make that podcast interesting. And I'm really interested to see how they pull that off, or what the plans are to do it. Because again, just because that event itself is not something that's great to watch, it doesn't mean that it's not a good test, that it's not going to mess these people up and really find out who can, now deal with the breadth of the weekend in a diminished capacity. But it gives you the opportunity, I think, to do some pretty cool stuff, storytelling and messaging, things like that can keep a viewer engaged for however long this workout's going to take, like an hour, maybe, if not more.
Yeah, 45 minutes to 50 minutes.
And that goes by pretty quickly.
It does go by quick. And so we went on live with my podcast host, John, from Barbell Spin, and Travis, and we ripped it up pretty good initially. And so I think it's a great test. Right. And I think it's going to be very, it's going to be a beatdown. It's going to be very old school. It's going to have that 2018 day one feel, right? Yeah. That was like, the biggest day in CrossFit history. I remember that was that. Yeah. And so, but people were getting carried off the floor for the row, right? Because they were numb, right? It was like saddle ass, right? And that was it. But their soreness was pretty low following that. They recovered really quick. It was just more of the time under tension, just sitting on the rower. This will be different, and this will eat them up. And the soreness from all the eccentric loading of stepping off a box is going to be big. And so Dave, if you haven't watched all of Dave's, Dave said there will be twists. He said it on every podcast or every interview that he's done since it went live. And so my guess is it's going to be mixed with something every 250 or every 100 you go and do something else, in my thought. And I think the bag might be heavier, right? Because it's 45-35. I think it's going to be heavier. And I do think it's going to set the tone for the weekend of, okay, here's what's not the first event. He said it's not the first event. But it's going to set you up poorly to play through the weekend, and who can, maybe a little old school vibes of who can survive, right? I feel like we haven't had the who can survive since 2018. It's who can go the fastest, right? Like who's just the fittest, maybe not the most enduring, right? And so this is going to create a fatigue level that people haven't experienced at the games, in my opinion, in a long time.
No, I agree. And like I said, I think this just goes perfectly with Dave's MO. We're going to just put you through the ringer on day one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just think about Navy SEAL. They're trying to get you to quit.
Right. And also, yeah, I agree 100%. And also, doing what he does best, which is taking topics and just like shoving it down people's throat again.
You don't want to do more of this? Here you go.
Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah. Here's 1,000.
Exactly.
Enjoy that.
For sure. Okay. Well, I think that is getting close to wrapping up. Is there anything, that you feel you want to say or discuss, about the current situation and being, not being pulled back on, or anything that we haven't talked about?
No, I would just like to take another opportunity to just say thank you to everybody who's reached out, who's been supportive of this. You have no idea how much it's meant to me. I am, like I said, I'm not optimistic, but I'm hopeful that maybe this isn't the last time. My experience in 25 years in broadcasting has taught me that once you get sort of shown the door, that rarely do you get asked back. Now, maybe that changes. I hope it does. But I'm so appreciative of this community, how supportive everyone has been, everyone who's reached out, everyone who's texted, people who called. It really means a lot. And I said this on our show a couple weeks ago, and I'll say it again. Receiving that amount of support causes you to take a hard look in the mirror to make sure that you're being the type of person that is worthy of that. And it has made me realize, I'm going to really work on being better at some things, and just trying to be a better person overall, better husband, better partner, better everything, just to make sure that I'm worthy of all the support and praise that has come my way. Cause it means more than anybody can imagine. Like when I first found out, like I was in not a good place, and it's definitely helped pull me out of it, because this, as I mentioned in my post, that job of calling the games has meant more to me than anything that I have done in my career, period. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. In case there was a question, it has, you've been such a positive influence on, everyone in the CrossFit space, right?
Thanks.
It really has been. And from everything I've read, I don't know you personally, maybe we can become friends moving forward and stuff. And so, it seems like your influence in everyone's life as a mentor, as a professional, as a friend is second to none. So that's really, really cool. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
I want you to sign us off, as you do at the games. Can you do that?
At the games?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I got a rollout to talk over, so I don't know. That's going to do it. The WODprep podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. For CJ, I'm Sean. Take care of each other. Be better, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I got to work on the timing.